Most people think of the Jersey Shore as boardwalks and beach bars and Bruce Springsteen lyrics, but there is a 5-mile stretch of the Monmouth County coastline where the average home sells for over $3 million, where the streets go silent every Friday at sundown, and where almost no one who lives there during the summer months was born in New Jersey. These are not weekenders. This is a single community numbering roughly 75,000 people. They trace their ancestry to the same handful of streets in Aleppo, Syria, and every summer they leave Brooklyn and come here, all of them, together. In Deal, New Jersey, there are more than 40 synagogues for a year-round population of under 1,000. The median home value exceeds $3.2 million, and there is a community edict issued in 1935 and still enforced today that prohibits marriage to anyone who converts to Judaism. Not discourages, prohibits. On a Thursday afternoon in July, Deal looks like nowhere else on the Jersey Shore. Wide residential streets lined with limestone and stucco mansions sit behind sculpted hedgerows. There is no commercial signage, no tourist traffic. Black SUVs fill every driveway. The sound of children drifts from behind garden walls. The smell of jasmine rice and stuffed grape leaves floats through an open kitchen window. Women in designer sunglasses walk in pairs toward the beach. Men in linen shirts sit on shaded porches speaking in English laced with Arabic and threaded with Hebrew. The wealth is enormous. The cultural cohesion is total. And to most Americans, this world does not exist. The question is simple. How did a community of Syrian Jewish immigrants build a parallel civilization on the Jersey Shore that has endured for more than a century? The answer begins not in New Jersey, but in the souks of Aleppo. Syrian Jews had lived in that city for more than 2,000 years. The Great Synagogue of Aleppo, built in the 5th century, once housed the Aleppo Codex. That manuscript is one of the most important documents in Jewish history. Generations of scholars studied within its walls. Merchants traded silk and spices in the covered markets a few streets away. But by the 1880s, economic decline and Ottoman conscription laws began pushing young men westward. The first Syrian Jewish immigrants arrived in New York around 1892. They carried with them a language, a cuisine, a liturgy, and a set of social bonds so tightly woven that an ocean crossing could not pull them apart. They settled first on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Then they moved to Bensonhurst and Flatbush in Brooklyn. By the 1920s, the community had concentrated along Ocean Parkway and Kings Highway. The storefronts along those Brooklyn corridors still carry the traces today. Judaica shops beside Middle Eastern bakeries, linen merchants beside spice importers. They built their own synagogues, their own schools, their own social clubs. They were distinct from the Ashkenazi Jews who surrounded them. They spoke Judeo-Arabic at home. They ate kibbeh and lahem bajin and sambusek. They married within the community with a consistency that would define every generation that followed. A rabbinical authority named Hacham Baruch ben Haim helped build the institutional scaffolding that held this world together. The schools, the courts of religious law, the charitable societies, each one reinforced the same message. This community is a world unto itself. In the 1920s, a handful of Syrian Jewish families began renting summer homes in the small shore towns of Deal and Long Branch. The attraction was simple: a wide sandy beach, affordable housing stock, 90 minutes from Brooklyn by car. But the pattern that followed was anything but simple. Families told other families, extended clans rented on the same streets, cousins bought houses beside cousins. By the 1940s, entire blocks in Deal were occupied by Syrian Jewish families from Memorial Day through Labor Day. The transformation was gradual but inexorable. A single block in 1935 became 2 blocks in 1940, 4 blocks by 1950, 8 blocks by 1960. What began as a summer refuge became the center of gravity for an entire community's seasonal existence. The real estate strategy was distinctive. Syrian families did not buy through agents or public listings, they bought through community networks. When a house came on the market in Deal, word spread through the synagogues and social halls along Ocean Parkway before any sign appeared on the lawn. families purchased in clusters. Neighbors would be relatives. The next street over would be the same clan. Over 3 decades, this quiet, deliberate acquisition transformed Deal from a sleepy beach town into something that has no equivalent anywhere else in America. The wealth concentrated, the real estate values soared, and the outsiders who had owned property here for generations began to wonder what was happening to their neighborhood. A longtime community historian named David Haber has described the migration pattern as something closer to a tribal movement than a real estate transaction. He has explained that families did not move to Deal as individuals. They moved as clans. A grandmother would come first, then her daughters and their husbands, then the cousins. Within 5 years, an entire extended family would be living on the same street. The houses changed hands, but the street never lost its people. The neighborhood, in effect, became a physical extension of the family structure itself. Then came the edict. In 1935, the chief rabbis of the Brooklyn Syrian community issued a formal proclamation. The community would not accept converts under any circumstances. Any Syrian Jew who married a convert would be excluded from community institutions. Their children would not be enrolled in community schools. Their marriage would not be recognized by community rabbis. The edict has been reaffirmed multiple times, most recently in 2006. It remains the most controversial and most consequential decision in the community's American history. And it is, by the admission of community leaders themselves, the single most effective instrument of cultural preservation any modern Jewish community has ever devised. Where other immigrant groups dissolved into America within 2 or 3 generations, the Syrian community did not. The edict kept the boundaries impermeable. On a Friday morning in July, the kosher markets along Norwood Avenue in Deal and the surrounding streets are packed beyond capacity. This is not ordinary grocery shopping. This is preparation for a weekly event that defines the entire social architecture of the community. Butchers behind glass counters prepare cuts of lamb. Bakeries produce trays of ka'ak, the sesame bread rings that have been a staple since Aleppo. Baklava sits in stacked aluminum pans beside challah loaves. Caterers load vans with hotel trays of mashi and kibbeh and laban. The scale of a Friday night dinner in a Deal household is not a family meal. It is a banquet. 20 guests is modest. 40 is not unusual. The dining tables in these homes are built for this purpose. Some stretch 12 feet long. The silver service is polished to mirror brightness. The tablecloths are white linen with embroidery along the edges. The acceleration builds through Friday afternoon. The last deliveries arrive. Children are called inside. The smell of slow-cooked meat and saffron fills the residential streets. And then at sundown, Deal enters its weekly transformation. The cars stop. The streets empty. Families walk in clusters toward one of the more than 40 synagogues scattered through the residential blocks. Fathers hold the hands of small children. Teenage boys walk in groups of 3 or 4. Older women move slowly, arm in arm. The entire municipality goes still. The liturgy inside these synagogues follows Sephardic rite. The melodies are sung in maqam modes drawn from Arabic musical tradition. The cantor does not sound like a cantor in an Ashkenazi synagogue in Manhattan or Chicago. He sounds like something far older, something that carries the acoustic memory of a courtyard in Aleppo 4 centuries ago. The congregations are full. 3 generations sit together. A grandfather who remembers his own grandfather speaking Arabic. A teenager who has never been to Syria, but who can chant the same melodies that once echoed in the great synagogue before it burned. The service lasts nearly 2 hours. The voices rise and fall in rhythms that are familiar to anyone who has ever attended a Sephardic ceremony anywhere on earth. A young mother in the community has described the Deal summer as the only time the entire world makes sense. She has said that in Brooklyn, during the winter months, the community is scattered across different neighborhoods and different schools. But in Deal, every person she passes on the street is someone she knows. Her children play with the same children her mother played with a generation earlier. The beach is not a holiday. It is a homecoming that happens every single year. She has explained that her own parents were unclear about whether they were American or Syrian, but by the time she was born, the answer was obvious. They were neither. They were Deal. The community's relationship to the beach itself is unlike anything else on the Jersey Shore. Syrian Jewish families do not mix with the public crowds at Pier Village or the Asbury Park Boardwalk. They gather at specific sections of the Long Branch and Deal beachfront. The same families claim the same spots year after year. Older women sit in clusters under wide umbrellas. Children are watched communally. A toddler wanders 3 towels away, and a woman who is not his mother scoops him up without a word because she has known his family for 40 years. Teenagers circulate in loose groups, performing the ancient social choreography of a community that knows exactly who will marry whom. The sand functions as an open-air extension of the living room, and the social rules of the living room apply in full. The men do not swim beside the women. The unmarried do not sit with the married. The elders occupy the best shaded spots. Order prevails. The business culture of the SY community operates on a logic that is invisible to outsiders but absolute within. The community is concentrated in a remarkably narrow set of industries: electronics retail, textile and apparel import, discount retail chains, real estate development. These are not career choices. They are community industries built on trust networks that function because every participant is known to every other participant. A handshake between 2 SY businessmen on a Deal porch carries the weight of a legal contract. The social cost of breaking it is not a lawsuit. It is total exclusion from a community that governs every other dimension of your life. No credit from the informal lending circles. No customers from the social networks. No acceptance in the schools or the synagogues or the summer world of Deal. A former electronics retailer in the community has explained that family is never separate from business in the SY world. His supplier was his wife's cousin, his landlord was his business partner's father-in-law, his best customer sat beside him in synagogue every Saturday morning. He has described this web of relationships as both the greatest advantage and the greatest pressure of SY communal life. You cannot fail quietly. Everyone sees, everyone knows, everyone remembers. He has said that he spent 30 years in business and never once made a decision without thinking about how it would affect his standing in the community. The summer population of Deal includes thousands of children. They attend community-run day camps with names that echo the old country. They ride bicycles in packs along residential streets that carry almost no through traffic. The density of community ownership has effectively made these public roads into private lanes. The children grow up knowing they will marry within this world. They grow up knowing every adult on their street by name. They grow up in a place that looks like suburban New Jersey from a satellite photograph, but functions like a village from a century ago. They learn the language from their grandmothers. They learn the prayers from their grandfathers. They learn the unwritten rules of community life by osmosis. A Deal community rabbi has said that the goal of the summer is not leisure. It is transmission. He has explained that children absorb more of their identity walking the streets of Deal in one July than they do in an entire year of formal schooling in Brooklyn. The language they hear on the pavement, the food they eat at their grandmother's table, the prayers they absorb through repetition until the melodies live in their bodies. He has described Deal as the community's living classroom, the place where culture is not taught but breathed. The place where a child understands, without anyone telling them, what it means to belong to something larger than themselves. If you have spent enough time in Deal to feel the rhythms, you also begin to feel the walls. The edict against accepting converts is not an abstract theological position debated in academic papers. It has consequences that shape individual lives. A member of the community who marries outside, even to another Jew from a different background, faces exclusion from the institutions that define daily existence. Their children may not attend community schools. They may lose access to the social networks that provide business capital, interest-free loans, childcare, and the thousand small acts of mutual aid that sustain a community of this density. Critics within the broader Jewish world have called the edict racist. Defenders within the Syrian community respond with a question of their own. Name another immigrant community in America that has preserved its language, its cuisine, its liturgy, and its social structure intact for more than a century. They argue the edict is not a wall built from prejudice. It is a wall built from memory, from the knowledge of what happens when a small community dissolves into a larger one. The real estate pressures are mounting as well. Deal and the surrounding towns of El Baran and Allenhurst have become so expensive that younger Syrian families find themselves priced out of the community's geographic heartland. Homes that sold for $500,000 in the 1990s now change hands for $5 million or more. Some families have begun expanding into Oakhurst, Ocean Township, and the edges of Long Branch. New mansions rise on streets where modest bungalows stood a decade earlier. The community's gravitational pull reshapes every neighborhood it enters. Property values follow. Old residents depart. New residents arrive who already belong to the network. Non-Syrian residents of the area have complicated feelings about their neighbors. A longtime resident of the Deal area, quoted in a New Jersey media profile, has said that the Syrian community transformed these towns from places that were fading into places that are flourishing. She has acknowledged that the wealth they brought rescued local businesses and funded municipal services that would otherwise have collapsed. But she has also said there is a boundary you cannot cross, that she lived beside the same family for 15 years and was never once invited inside their home. Her words carry no bitterness, only the honest weight of proximity without intimacy, of living beside a world that does not need you to complete it. She has said she bears them no ill will. She simply understands that she will never be part of what they have built. Younger members of the community are more connected to the wider world than any generation before them. Social media, university degrees from institutions far from Brooklyn, professional careers outside the traditional community industries. Some question the edict quietly over dinner tables. Some question the insularity with their choices, but the pull of Deal in summer remains enormous. The pull of the extended family, the pull of the business networks, the pull of a world where every face is familiar and every Shabbat table has a chair already set for you. The community is not fracturing. It is doing what every living culture does, negotiating between the weight of what it has preserved and the pressure of what it might become. Saturday afternoon in Deal, late July, Shabbat is drawing to a close. The sun sits low over the rooftops of Ocean Avenue. Families walk back from the beach in loose clusters. Children carry sandy towels. Fathers fold aluminium chairs under their arms. The streets are quiet but beginning to stir. Somewhere a screen door closes softly. A group of teenage girls stands on a corner on Norwood Avenue laughing about something only they will ever understand. An older man sits on his porch with a glass of tea, watching the street with the unhurried patience of someone who has spent every summer of his life in this exact chair. 90 years ago, his grandparents left a city that no longer exists as they knew it. The great synagogue of Aleppo burned in 1947. The Jewish quarter emptied. The language they spoke at home has no country left to claim it. But here, on a street in Deal, where every house belongs to someone they know, the tea tastes the same. The prayers sound the same, and the children still chase each other barefoot on pavement that holds no memory of anywhere but this. The light moves off the rooftops. The voices carry.